Hey traders, John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 15th of April to the 19th of April 2019. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in the coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off with the US dollar index. Now, last week we were looking for a decline in the US dollar index from the 97.37 area. We did get a bounce from here to the downside, and we took out the target set from last week at the 96.81, which was about here. We took it out almost to the pip. And we're sitting around this area going into this week. So very simply put, going into this week, we are looking for further declines to the downside in the US dollar index overall. Having taken out this target last week, we may see a little bit of a bounce. We may see a correction, perhaps even one more retest of the 97.37. If we do, this will once again be an opportunity to look for further declines to the downside in the US dollar index. And we're going to be looking for further declines down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set at the 95.99. Now, if we zoom out just a little bit to get a bit of context here, you can see that one of the reasons we're looking down towards here is a number of times in the past when we failed at this area, we have actually come down to test the 95.99. We failed in this area, especially from the 97.37. We have come back down to retest the 95.99. We failed in this area, we came down and retested. We retested, and we're looking for this historical performance here to once again take place. This can happen next week. It has the ability to actually do this in 1 week. However, we may see a little bit of a correction first next week before further declines, maybe the week after. So overall, we are looking to the downside for the 95.99 in the dollar index, and we're going to go into next week with a bearish bias on the dollar index, but a slightly bearish to neutral, as we may see a little bit of a correction first. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now, last week we traded into the 64.58 level, which was the target set from last week. And we started to see a bit of a sell-off from the 64.58. Now, we are still trending to the upside in oil. However, this is an area we could start to see some profit taking coming in after this big rally. And we are going to be looking to see if that profit taking comes in next week. So this is an area going into next week we're going to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we have to have these tradable patterns. We don't just short these levels or buy these levels blindly. But if we get these right kind of bearish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set, the 62.03. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key of support to the downside in target 2 at the 60.54. So the first pair we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now, last week we were sitting at a key area of support at the 1.12150, which was right here. And we were looking further advances to the upside in euro dollar. We're taking this level off now just to keep these charts clean. And we were looking up towards the target of the 1.1341. Now, we have started to make our way up towards this target, and we're looking for this target to be achieved this week. Going into next week, if we can get a correction and possibly even a retest of broken resistance turning support at the 1.1246. This would once again provide a great opportunity to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the target set from last week at the 1.1341. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance to the upside in target 2 at the 1.1419. So the next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now, for 2 weeks, we've pretty much gone nowhere in the pound dollar. We've just been coiling above the 1.2960 area. Very simply put, as the uptrend in the pound dollar is still intact, as these green levels denote, we are still looking overall for bullish formations and patterns and bullish setups to the upside in the pound. Going into next week, it's quite unusual to see currency pairs going on for this kind of correction for 3 weeks in a row, so there is a good chance we could start to see some volatility in this pair next week. If we can get a pullback towards the 1.2960 and potentially even a retest of the 1.2960, this is going to provide us an opportunity to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And if we get those bullish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the 1.3253. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance to the upside in target 2, the 1.3364. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we were looking for a pullback in the US dollar Japanese yen and a potential retest of the 110.92 area, and you can see we did test this area and we did get a nice rally to the upside in the US dollar yen, and we stopped just shy of our target at the 112.23. So very simply put, going into next week we are looking for the target set from last week at the 112.23 to finish. You can see, and there are two levels very close to each other. This is why I have actually zoned this. Usually we look at the levels, but this is a bit more of a zone because there's two levels very close to each other. Once we trade into the 112.23 as we're looking to do next week, this is going to be an area we're going to start to look for bearish formations and patterns, especially if we start to get those declines in the dollar index. And if we get the right kind of tradable bearish setups in this area, we're going to start to look for shorts down towards the key area of support and the bounce area from last week at the 110.92. So next pair we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now last week we were looking further advances to the upside and we took out the target set from last week at the 0.71680. We had a sell-off as profit taking came in from this level at 0.71680 last week, and we retested the key area of broken resistance turning support at 0.7127. So very simply put, going into this week we are looking further advances to the upside in Aussie dollar. If we can get a pullback towards broken resistance turning support, and as always preferably if we can retest broken resistance turning support, as this gives us better risk to reward, we're going to be looking in this area for bullish formations and patterns, and we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the second target set from last week and the next key area resistance to the upside, the 0.7235. So the next market we're going to look at is the New Zealand dollar. Now last week we were looking for further declines to the downside to the 0.670. We did start to decline to the downside, but we actually bounced twice at the 0.67200. And when we put this into context with the dollar index and also a certain type of structure that we have going on here in the New Zealand dollar, and for TFT members we'll go through this in the room on Monday, we are now looking at the 0.6720 as being the potential bottom here in the New Zealand dollar. So very simply put, we're only going to be looking for long opportunities in the New Zealand dollar going into next week. We would turn bearish again below the 0.670, but as it stands, we're looking for only bullish setups here. And if we can get a pullback, possibly one more retest of the 0.6720, any pullback in this area is going to provide an opportunity to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of tradable setups in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at 0.6826. So the next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now last week we actually had a move to the upside in the US dollar Swiss franc, so we had the US dollar advancing against the Swiss franc, despite the fact we had a decline in the dollar index and despite the fact we had a number of currencies actually appreciating against the dollar. So what this is telling us is, going into this week, the Swiss franc is actually in and of itself fairly weak, and although we are looking for bearishness in the dollar index, we are still structured to the upside in the US dollar franc. So we are still looking for further advances to the upside based only on really the weakness of the Swiss franc. We're not going to argue with the market if it's still moving to the upside. So very simply put, going into next week, we are going to be looking tentatively, as we will be going long, a fairly weak dollar. And you don't have to trade this to the upside. You can look for the shorts instead. We'll come to this in a second. But we are in a place where we can start tentatively, if we so wish, to look for bullish formations and patterns. And we'd be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.0062. Now once we trade into the 1.00620, this is going to be an area we're going to start to see if we can get some bearish formations and patterns. And we may find that in the dollar index it looks something like this. Perhaps we get a little bit of a correction in the dollar index, maybe even a retest of the level we highlighted as this moves up, and then we start to get this decline to the downside. So we are still tentatively looking to the upside, but once we trade into the 1.00620, this is going to be an area can start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at potentially initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target down here, the 1.0010. And if we get a break through there, we'll be looking all the way back down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 0.9975. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now we've been trading around the 1.33060 for a while now, ever since the 18th over here, almost for a month. I mean, this has pretty much been going on for nearly 6 weeks, this correction here. But we are still structured to the upside, and as a result we are still looking further advances to the upside as the high probability move. Again, this is based primarily on weakness in the Canadian dollar, and when we're looking through the charts this week, I mean, we would preference any dollar weakness trades over any dollar strength trades, because if we go long here, we're actually trading dollar strength, and these in the US dollar Swiss franc and US dollar CAD to the upside are still viable opportunities, but they are more risky than some of the other opportunities. But as you saw last week, the US dollar franc actually advanced to the upside despite the fact the dollar index came to the downside. So we have to trade what we see in front of us here, and the reality is we're still trending to the upside in the dollar CAD. So very simply put, going into next week, we are looking for potential bullish setups around the 1.33060. And so if we can get another retest of the 1.33060, this will once again be an opportunity to start to look to see if we can get those bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the target we've had to here set now for a couple of weeks at the 1.3467. And if we get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.3564. So just to reiterate, any longs in this pair will be trading long the dollar, which could be weak next week. So just bear that in mind. You may decide that the US dollar CAD is not a fantastic pair for next week. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, anyone who's been following the forecast knows that we have been playing this range in gold for the last few weeks, from the bounce of the 128.410 up towards the 1320, and then we were looking for shorts from the 1320 down towards the 128.4010. And last week we were looking for a bounce from the 1284.10 into the 1310.90. Now we came within the spread, so anyone with a limit on this level would actually have been taken out for the limit. However, if you accommodated the spread, this would have been missed. So very simply put, going into next week, we are still looking for another potential rally to the upside in gold. First of all, we're looking for a correction and possibly another retest of the 128.40.10. If we get a bit of a bounce in the dollar index before we get a decline to the downside, then we're going to see this probably trade into the 128.410 once again. We can potentially look for shorts to the downside. However, what we'd prefer to do is once we trade into the 128.410, the preferable move here will be another opportunity from this area to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to, once again, start to look, if we get those tradable setups, up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1310.90. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1320.67. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I hope you all, as always, have a fantastic trading week next week. The only thing left for me to say is take care and don't forget to trade safely.